Okay, today is the 5th of August, 2025. This is Alternate Tuning Tuesday. Today we are going to be looking at Open G tuning. What is Open G tuning? Well, your low E string is going to be dropped to D. We're a little sharp here, there we go. Your A string going to be dropped to G. Your D string is still going to be a D string. Your G string still going to be a G string. Your B string still going to be a B string, and your high E string is going to be dropped to a high D. So what does this give us? Well, like all open tunings, Open G gives us a G major chord if we strum all the strings. And like all open tunings, we have the ability to bar any fret and get a major chord. So there's our fourth and fifth, which would be a C and a D chord. So your fifth fret is a C, your seventh fret is a D, and of course your 12th fret is G one octave up. What's special about Open G? We've already looked at Open D and Drop D. What we said about that is that in conventional tuning, your D chord can be kind of anemic. It's down there on the bottom, or I'm sorry, the higher four strings, the four thinnest strings. So D chord dynamically can be a little weak compared to chords that come naturally to the guitar, like G. So why would we want an open tuning in a key like G that already shines on a conventionally tuned guitar? Well, a few different reasons. One of those reasons is the slide. A lot of slide work in Open D is just on this, on these highest two strings, but in Open G, we have these highest three strings working together with a G, B, and D. So we already have a triad there. Because of that, we can access things like minor chords very easily on the highest three strings. And let's talk about the guitar's family tree. The banjo, of all things, the guitar's kind of weird backwoods uncle. That might not be a fair characterization. We're talking here about the 5-string banjo, an instrument that traces its roots back to Africa, really. The banjo, in an early nascent form, was brought to America by the slave trade, by enslaved people from Africa who had brought their tradition of this instrument to the Americas. The 5-string banjo is still used in bluegrass and old-time music. Let's not confuse it with the 4-string banjo. 4-string banjo or tenor banjo is tuned like a tenor guitar. That's used in Dixieland jazz. That's used in some Irish folk music, English folk music. Totally different instrument, but the 5-string banjo is also tuned to an Open G. That lets us use some of the techniques that a banjo player might use. That includes things like finger style rolls. That includes things like finger picking, finger style. What's cool about Open G is you can bring in all that banjo material. That entire separate tradition of string music is accessible to you if you're tuned in Open G. The piece that I opened with was a halting playthrough of a John Fahey arrangement of The First Noel in Open G. And you will find, if you look at the some of the various books I've shared before, let's go through them really quick here. We've got this guy right here, Beginner's Finger-Picking Guitar by Stefan Grossman. We've got various other books by Stefan Grossman, like Complete Country Blues Guitar has several songs in Open G. Some of Steve James' books Let's see what we got. Let's see, we've got Roots and Blues fingerstyle guitar, has some selections in open G. Roots and Blues fingerstyle guitar explorations, and the Fingerstyle Blues songbook, all by Steve James. Excellent resources if you're working in this tuning. And one more indispensable book, if I can find it here. Well, I seem to have misplaced it, but there is, oh, here it is. This book, Slide Basics by David Hamburger, is primarily in open G and open D. Lets you work through how the slide works in those tunings. Now, Hamburger emphasizes the fact that in open G, you're primarily playing in a closed position. You're using the slide on at least the top three strings, the highest three strings, the thinnest three strings. Unlike open D, where you're frequently using open tunings and using the slide on one or two strings, it lends itself to a much more ethereal, bright tone. And you'll see that come up in a lot of fingerstyle blues. You'll also see, one more book, Pete Madsen's Play the Blues Like. This goes through various people, not just blues people either. You've got Charlie Patton, a lot of open G. Got Elizabeth Cotton, more of a folk fingerstyle guitarist, a lot of open G. Son House, Jimmy Page played a lot of open G and a lot of open D and drop D as well. Outside of the blues and folk tradition, a lot of the Rolling Stones catalog is in open G. Songs like Wild Horses. Keith Richards was famous for having removed the thickest string, what would be, in standard tuning, a low E string, in this tuning, a low D string, but because open G kind of lends itself to using the five highest strings, a lot of his songs were just played on those five strings in open G. Open G, unlike open D, makes it easy to access both major chords like any open tuning, but also minor chords. Because you have this triad on the bottom three strings, it's very easy to get to a minor chord. That's one of the strengths of open G. One more place this comes up in the family tree of stringed instruments. What is this thing? This is what is called a cigar box guitar. There's an entire community of people, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, who build these things out of old cigar boxes. This is plugged in, so pardon my feedback. These are almost always tuned in open G. You can see this has three strings. I bought this one for, it was less than 20 bucks at Half Price Books. It was in a box, like one of those kits that you'd find in the bargain section at Barnes & Noble. You kind of just put it together, put on the strings. They use bolts for the nut and for the bridge. And because we are in an open tuning, there's your G, there's your C, there's your D, and there's your G one octave up. So it's easy to play a 12-bar blues on this. You can also pluck open notes. This does not have actual fret wires. It has the frets drawn on, and you can see the action is very high. This is designed to be played with a slide. In fact, it came with an inexpensive glass slide. What's cool about this is you can turn the amp off there so we don't have that feedback to deal with. What's cool about this is you can play yourself a 12-bar progression, loop it, and then solo over it, and it gives you a very haunting, ethereal sound. You can solo over that in whatever tuning you want. In conventional tuning, as long as you're in the key of G, you're golden. So What is cool about OpenG? First of all, we have an open chord that we can bar at any fret. We have access to variant chords, minor chords, whatever we want on the higher 3 strings. We talked about drop D lending itself to power chords on those thicker strings. Well, OpenG lends itself to power chords, minor chords, major chords, whatever you want on those 3 smallest strings. David Hamburger has a great video out there on his favorite chords in OpenG where he talks about these shapes, how to access them, how to use them. Tony Polcastro has a great series on OpenG where he starts with banjo rolls. He teaches banjo rolls and he teaches chord shapes in OpenG and the various ways that you can access these shapes and you can get whatever sounds you want out of your guitar. A lot of slide-driven fingerstyle blues is going to be in, well, I guess it's not fingerstyle if it's slide-driven, but you know what I mean, that type of music. You often use that kind of aggressive pluck, that slapping of the string. So you can have this sort of. You can have those kind of jangly, discordant notes. A song like Death Letter Blues is going to be driven primarily by the tension between that slapping effect and that sliding on the other strings. It can be very, once you get the rhythm down, it can be a very driving, incredible sound. So, OpenG, I am going to try to do a piece that I perform in all of these tunings as I go forward with my Open Tuning Tuesdays. What are the disadvantages of a tuning like OpenG? Well, it lends itself to D and G, but there's other keys that can be harder to access. Again, you can always get to a chord, but a lot of chords like say your E chords, they're going to be harder to get to. They're not going to be as loud and proud as they are on a standard tuned guitar. But OpenG is a pretty versatile tuning. Again, you have some access to minor chords that are a little harder to get to in other open tunings. You have access to the key of G, obviously, but you always have access to the key of G, even in conventional tuning. So that's not a really big selling point. You have pretty good access to the key of D. You have excellent access for slides. What's cool about OpenG is even though it's thought of as a slide tuning, you have a lot that you can do just fingerstyle. A lot of players like Elizabeth Cotten was primarily a finger plucking player, and she used OpenG extensively. You have access to rock kind of sounds, a la the Rolling Stones, and you have access to the entire banjo repertoire, if that's something that interests you. I don't own a banjo, and I don't really know my way around a banjo, but I do like some bluegrass, and it's cool to know that maybe I can access some of those sounds on my guitar. Things to look into, if you like this tuning, are the different finger roll patterns. You can experiment with things like finger picks, where you're kind of using, you're getting that more plucky sound if you've got these things attached to your fingers. Really opens up a whole new world of technique, and you do have those kind of thumb pluck slappy sounds on your bass strings, which is a good thing to have access to as well. Thank you for your time. Sorry I didn't have more material prepared in this key, but it's kind of cool what you can do on your, you have a lot of like turnover type things available here too. Like a lot of open tunings, because you have notes that are in the key next to each other, you can sort of play a scale while you pluck the strings in general, and you can have a lot of harmonious almost chords like. So if you're just moving up and down a scale with one string, the other strings are generally going to be compatible with that because you only have 3 notes here. You got you got D, G, D, G, B, D. So really there's only 3 notes you're working with here. You've already got a triad no matter what you're doing. So it kind of lends itself to that thing where you're just moving up and down one scale and still strumming the entire instrument, which is a cool ability to have. That's not going to be quite as obvious or as dramatic as something like let's say an open D minor tuning. Maybe we'll get into that one next week. Future tunings I'd like to go into, I want to kind of play with open D minor because that's a very cool sound. It's very haunting and minor and makes some cool sounds. And I also want to do a E flat standard where basically every string has been dropped half a step. That lends itself to singing if you have a deeper voice. It lends itself to bending and fingerstyle playing if you capo on the first fret. So basically you've lowered yourself to 1/2 step and then you raise yourself 1/2 step with the capo, but you end up with strings that are a little more slack, neck length, what's that called? There's a term for that, it escapes me at the moment, but the distance from the nut to the bridge, I forget what that's called, but you have a shorter that distance. That lends itself to bends, that lends itself to easier fingerstyle playing because you really have more slack. So that's something to keep in mind. If you look at something like Colter Wall's music, he plays almost everything dropped down half a step and capoed up half a step. So he can do those sort of bendy riffs that he is known for. So that's it for this week. We've got a Theory Thursday coming up on the key of D, and we'll be back to our normal schedule. Thank you very much.